It's not quite halfway through the month, and I've screened 43 movies. I actually watched 41 of them. Been a full week of proper Octembering, and I can't wait to unload this trash from my brain. Welcome to the Oktoberfest podcast. I'm your host and cinema curmudgeon, Jeff, and this is the roundup for week 2 of 2024. After recording the last episode, I had some unfinished business to settle. I still had to watch R through Z in the Alphabet Challenge. After that was handled, I tried to come up with smaller nightly themes to cobble things together, but didn't always succeed. Sometimes the description on a movie is misleading, sometimes you run out of haunted hotel movies, sometimes you watch 15 minutes of horror hotel and decide you'd rather be fed to a wood chipper than subject yourself to any more of it. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's do this in order. The Return, 2020. There isn't a shortage of R movies. I don't know how I ended up here other than fate deciding I had to suffer. The Return opens with a young boy being scolded by his mother for playing with a pinwheel, which seems like a strange place to draw the line. A bad CG smoke monster breaks out of the cellar. Jump to many years later, now that kid's in college and returning to an empty home after his father dies mysteriously. Couple hours of awkward conversations and failed jump scares later, it's a time travel movie, and in the end it never happened. Fails to be spooky, fails to be funny, skip it. Salem's Lot, 2024. I read Salem's Lot many years ago, and I'm sure I've seen the original movie at some point. But aside from the broad strokes, little town, vampires, I've forgotten most of the story, until about 10 minutes into this film. In a great way, they manage to invoke the book, and there's a sense that it's a movie from another era. It gets a bit rushed halfway through, but overall I enjoyed it. Some scares, some tension, some humor. A good watch. Triangle, 2009. This is a perfect example of why I needed to start my Oktoberfest lists. I'd definitely seen this before, but had forgotten until about 15 minutes in. I recalled some of the twists here, but not enough to judge the flick. At first, this seems like a ghost ship story, but it's not. Then it seems like a psycho killer story, but it's not. At first, I hated this. Then I was intrigued by it, and I ended up leaning positive. I don't want to give away the trick here, but there's more to think about than it seems at the outset. Not high on scares, but a decent thinker. Unwelcome, 2023. A UK film about a couple who moved to the Irish countryside after being savagely beaten in their apartment by some thugs, because apparently London doesn't have police. Their new home comes with a strange gate and instructions to leave offerings to the wee folks, redcaps, sort of like wicked gnomes. It's a fine setup, but the next hour and change focuses on the couple's troubles with the terrible family they contracted with to repair their house. The redcaps are pretty great, but the movie needed more of them and less Cole Meany, who's great, but his character's an ass. Mild scares from the redcaps, real scares from unscrupulous humans. Vampyr, 1932. Vampyr isn't the first vampire movie. That was probably 1922's Nosferatu, but it was pretty early. It's hard to review a film this old, especially in the condition it was presented in. A title card explains that the original prints have been lost, and the cut available was made from remastering surviving parts of German and French copies. I found it difficult to focus on, and while there's some recorded audio, a lot of the screen time is spent slowly panning over pages of a book of vampire lore that just happens to have all the plot necessities in it. It's kind of fun to think about how they achieved their effects without any of the modern methods, though. Not scary, art history. WNUF Halloween Special, 2013. Not really a movie. The WNUF Halloween Special is an homage to 80s television. It's probably 80% fake commercials, a gimmick that gets old after a while, but they're full of references for horror fans. The broadcast opens with a local newscast full of puns and plugs for the Halloween Special, exploring a real haunted house. 800 commercials later, the special kinda happens between a lot more commercials. I was hoping for a bit more Ghost Watch and a lot less actual television PTSD flashbacks. Not scary, not for everyone. Folks of a certain vintage may enjoy the nostalgia. I'm not going to give the title of the X movie I tried to watch. I quit after 15 pretentious, obnoxious, incompetent minutes. I don't want to give these people any views for their nonsense. Suffice it to say, the X movie was too terrible to complete, and I took the L. Moving on. You're Not Alone, 2020. If Lifetime made horror movies, this would be one of them. Full of awkward conversations and repetitive scenes and people not doing things that would make sense, this tale of an estranged mother trying to reconnect with her young daughter after the death of her ex-husband keeps getting interrupted by some mischievous prankster destroying their home and killing people who, apparently aren't noticed as being missing or decomposing. It's not good, but it's not terrible until the very end. They set up a conclusion that could have played out, but instead opt for a twist that has no grounding and sucks. Possibly scary if you relate to the characters. Not good. Zoombies, 2017. X and Y were hard to get through. It had been a brutal night, and the pickings for unwatched Z movies were slim. I clicked into Zoombies, expecting the absolute worst. Prepared to pull the plug for the second time in an evening, probably an Octoberfest first. When the title card for the Asylum came up, I audibly groaned. These are the schlock peddlers behind endless Sharknado and Transmorpher ripoff flicks. But it was exactly what I needed to turn my night around. Make no mistake, it's bad, but in ways that are at least understandable and amusing. In an early scene, a scientist explaining how he was attacked by zombie monkeys starts having spasms like he's John Hurt in Alien. And I said aloud, if a monkey bursts out of his chest, I may die laughing. And then a monkey burst out of his chest. The practical effects are terrible, the CGI is worse, and the transition between the two never fails to elicit a laugh. An ugly virtual monkey jumps to person, cut to them holding a plushie covered in ketchup on their neck. Some friends, some inebriation, this can be a good time film. Just don't go in thinking it's a real movie. Having completed the Alphabet Gambit and still having some time in the night, I decided to reward myself by watching a good movie. I threw on Interview with the Vampyr, the '94 Brad Pitt, Tom Cruise classic, and took note of the amazing things that hold up. The creature effects, the epic tale of vampire life through the ages, and the things we didn't care to notice in the 90s, like the fact that Tom Cruise plays a Frenchman but doesn't even attempt a French accent. Occasionally dropping Mon Chari into conversation doesn't make you French any more than it makes you Raul Julia's Gomez Adams. Still, Interview is a solid watch. Now I'm in limbo. Without the challenge to guide me, there are so many options it can be paralyzing. Luckily, I've been adding to watch lists as I've trekked through the land of letters, and I had a pair in mind. In 1983, a Dutchman named Dick Maas released a movie called The Lift about a killer elevator. In 2001, a Dutchman named Dick Maas released a movie called Down, aka The Shaft, about a killer elevator. What possessed a man to make two movies about deadly elevators? Did he learn anything in the 18 years between making the two movies? I had to find out, so I watched them both. The Lift was shot in the Netherlands in the 1980s. It's awkwardly dubbed and often insane. The effects are practical and mostly laughable. The characters are pretty much universally horrible. Dick Maas thinks he can write jokes, but his jokes are terrible. Down is shot in the US in the aughts, with real Hollywood actors. Naomi Watts is doing her best impression of Anne Hesh in Godzilla. Michael Ironside is an unscrupulous German scientist. Dan Hedaya is a terrible cop. Ron Perlman is also here. Moss used a lot of the same scenes in his reboot, but with cheap and laughable CGI instead of cheap and laughable practicals. The truth is, he really made the same movie twice. Once again, all the characters are horrible. Once again, the science is very, very bad. Once again, the dialogue is awkward and unfunny, but this time without the benefits of bad dubbing to blame. It seems like Mr. Moss had some issues to air out. Issues with women, reporters, realtors, bosses, cops, microchips, scientists, mostly with elevators. I could probably do a whole episode on the madness and badness of these movies, and if there's interest, I just might. Let me know at octoberfestcast@gmail.com if you want to hear more about that. Anyhow, these fall short of how scary a movie about a killer elevator can be, which is saying something, as elevators cannot exactly chase you. Pretty easy to avoid. Next up, Odd Zombie Night. I picked a movie at random off one of my watch lists and rolled from there. Unfortunately, the movie was 1972's Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things. The story of a small theater troupe led to a little cemetery island off the coast of some city by their generally shitty troupe leader, for the purposes of exhuming a corpse and raising the dead using a book he found somewhere. The small cast do their jobs well enough, and the zombie stuff is fine for a low-budget offering from the 70s, but there's not anything good or bad enough here to make this worth seeking out. Maybe fun for theater kids who will probably relate more to the characters. Low scares, unless you're terrified of zombies that can operate a sailboat. The Dead Don't Die, 2019. Jim Jarmusch is a name I've long associated with weird cinema. He directed the black and white Johnny Depp weird western Dead Man and Forrest Whitaker urban samurai tale Ghost Dog. And he directed the strange zombie comedy starring Bill Murray and Adam Driver, with a supporting cast and names that most people would recognize. It's dark, it's meta, and it seems the entire film is on Valium. I liked it. I may have liked it more if I played it back at 2x speed. I suspect most people will not enjoy the very strange story of Centerville's fall to the zombie hordes thanks to polar fracking, which is totally safe and profitable. Low scares, weird laughs. It's a strange one. Spoopies, 1988. Figured I was already in the world of weird zombies. Let's go with one of the weirdest ones I know. The Spoopies really feels like someone had half a movie and decided to fill in around it after the fact. In one movie, a creepy, undead-looking gentleman is talking to his dead, but beautifully preserved, wife about how he only needs a few more sacrifices to restore her to him forever. In the other, a couple carfuls of kids are driving away from a party they got tossed out of because one of the guys is a dick, and trying to find another place to party. They come across a spooky mansion, which is apparently also the place the creeper from before is at, although none of these folks are ever in the same scene. One of the kids is at least 20 years older than the rest of the gang and is supposed to be a boyfriend and not a creepy uncle set to chaperone. The movie's full of fun creature effects. They had more ideas there than anywhere else, and it ends with a woman running from a horde of zombies for 10 minutes. Run, get grabbed, escape, run, get grabbed, escape, over and over. It's a trip. Not a good movie, but a decent bad one. If you like failure, check it out. From weird zombies to just weird, I started the next evening with All You Need Is Death from 2024. This slow and odd flick follows an Irish woman and her foreign boyfriend as they try to collect rare folk songs, the sort of things usually passed down orally through the generations. Evidently, there's an underground marketplace for this sort of thing. They find an old woman who's been given a cursed ancient song to remember. People die, things get very strange. I was interested the whole way through. It's a world of lore that's wholly new to me. Mildly creepy, very odd. I didn't know how to follow up something as unique and heavy as All You Need Is Death, so I just grabbed another at random off the list. Loop Track, a 2023 film from New Zealand, has us trekking into the bush with Ian, a man who probably shouldn't be hiking on his own for an hour, let alone the 4-day journey he's setting off on. Ian's having some anxiety issues and wants to get away from people for a bit, but he ends up being stuck with 3 other hikers on the trail. Things start to go wrong. Ian thinks they're being tracked by someone or something in the forest. Is there something in the woods with them? Is Ian mad? Are people being slaughtered by some giant black cassowary? It's a decent enough movie to find out for yourself. Moderate spooks if being lost in the woods gets you. While walking through the woods, I decided to fire up a favorite. The Ritual from 2017. After their friend is killed by thugs in London, again with thugs in London, a group of middle-aged gents go on a lad's trip to Sweden, where they're hiking in some rather gorgeous mountains. They find themselves stalked by something after trying to take a shortcut through some woods. There's a lesson here. If the shortcut were shorter, it would just be the way. I don't want to give too much away here because this is a good film to experience. But again, there's unfamiliar mythology at play. Decently scary, not for the squeamish. I decided to end the night with a combination of previous themes. Weird and woodsy. 2014's Black Mountainside is a movie I've watched a couple of times before, but never fully grokked. Very reminiscent of The Thing, Black Mountainside chronicles the happenings in the northernmost research outpost in Canada after they find a mysterious structure buried in the woods. After 3 viewings, the best I can come up with is that some cephalopodic bacteria makes folks go crazy, but I could still be missing layers. It's stark and cold and entirely driven by the performances. And I like it quite a bit. Scary if you plan on being isolated with a half dozen others in the woods with a talking deer god. Finally, we reached the last night. With a very special outing planned next week, I decided haunted hotels would be the theme for the day. Should be easy, I say to myself. I can think of 3 or 4 right off. Trouble is, there were only those 3 or 4, and the day was long. I deviated from my path, mixing in some movies about making movies, and then closed out with a hotel flick. I found symmetry there. The Innkeepers, 2012. This was a week for movies I'd forgotten to remember. I'd definitely seen The Innkeepers before. I definitely forgot how bored I was through most of it. couple of amateur paranormalists who work at a closing hotel decide to try and record its ghosts. That's the generous plot summary. Two morons who work at a shitty hotel don't do much for almost 2 hours is the less generous one. Appearances from pre-fame Lena Dunham as an annoying barista, and Kelly McGillis as a has-been actress who's moved on to do psychic conventions. Autobiographical? I don't know. This is largely skippable. A couple of jump scares, but a whole lot of annoying character work. Pass. Hell House, LLC. Hell House has become an annual watch for me. A solidly creepy found footage piece about a group putting on a haunted attraction in an actually haunted abandoned hotel. The opening narration is badly delivered in the normal cut, but I watched the director's cut, where the opening narration is badly delivered by a text-to-speech program. They've made 3 more Hell House movies. I've watched 2 of them, and they've failed to live up to this installment. Maybe in a couple years I'll try to watch the whole series in one go. This one will probably spook you. Don't watch alone at night with a weak constitution. Horror Hotel 2016. We've reached my second tap out of the season. There is no hotel. The only horror is how bad the acting, scripting, everything is. It looks like someone's shitty web skit series anthologized together. After suffering through an opening bit about a couple of groovy aliens crashing their space buggy into someone's parked car and then trying to steal her boyfriend, I watched the opening to a bit called Coma Girl, in which it appeared 2 men were attempting to have relations with a comatose woman in a wheelchair. Someone thought this was funny. It was too dumb to continue with. It's bad. It's offensive to anyone with a brain in their head. It's still better than the X movie. Having broken the streak with an exceptionally dumb piece of trash, I opted for some smart strange. Berberian's Sound Studio from 2013 is a movie about an English sound engineer who traditionally does pastoral films being hired by an Italian crew to mix their giallo horror picture. Between the culture clash and the horrible scenarios he's putting sounds to, his mind cracks a bit. Not a lot happens here, but it's a fascinating look at the Foley process and the making of movies in general. Toby Jones is pretty great in it. On the track of movies about movies, One Cut from the Dead from 2019 was next. The initial premise doesn't seem that interesting. A zombie movie shoot gets attacked by zombies. Yawn. But it's all in one long take. And that's just the first 30 minutes. The movie starts off technically impressive and a bit hysterical, and then goes full genius in the second act. Not scary, very funny, a must-see for folks who like movie making. From a smart film about making movies to a movie about a dumbass on film, Deadcast 2022. A live streamer who has been canceled for, well, the kind of shit live streamers do, takes his shot at redemption by doing a broadcast from a supposedly haunted house. There are a lot of places for this to go wrong, but it weaves a perfect line between them. The lead's obnoxious and needy, which tracks for the profession, but also genuine and likable. The movie's gross and scary, but also very fun. There's a solid blend of practical and CG, and I couldn't help but compare it to Evil Dead in a positive way. This one's worth a watch if you like the old Raimi stuff, or ever wanted to see Jake Paul get tormented by ghosts. Last movie of the week I had picked in advance. On Monday I'll be going to see The Shining in the theater. First for me. Excited for that. To set myself up for it, I watched 1408, another Stephen King story about a haunting in a hotel. This is one of my favorites. John Cusack plays an author who specializes in schlock books about haunted places. The kind of things that would be BuzzFeed or Cracked articles these days. 12 haunted graveyards, that kind of thing. He receives a postcard warning him to avoid a hotel room and can't be deterred, leading to a terrifying stay. It's hard to say much more without spoiling the fun, but if you do seek it out, make sure you're watching the theatrical cut, not the director's one. The final scene is different, and the theater cut gets me every time. And that was a week. Another 19 days of movies to get through, probably more bad than good. Have any suggestions? Want to hear more about any of these? Send a message to octemberfestcast@gmail.com. Time for me to head back to the movie mines. Happy Octembering. Keep it spooky.